Chapter 6, The Search for Security. When chicks are afraid, they hide under the loving wings of a hen in search for security. A frightened child runs to find his mother because beside her he feels secure. This demonstrates that fear and the search for security are found intimately associated. A man that fears being assaulted by assailants finds security in a gun. A country that fears being attacked by another country buys cannons, planes, warships. It will arm armies and prepare for war. Many people who do not know how to work are terrified when faced with misery. They search for security in crime by becoming thieves or assailants. Many women who lack intelligence are frightened when faced with the possibility of misery and become prostitutes. A jealous man who fears losing his wife searches for security in his gun. He kills and afterwards ends in jail. A jealous woman kills her rival or her husband and, in this way, becomes a murderer. She fears losing her husband and wanting to secure him. She kills another woman or resolves to kill him. A landlord, fearful that people will not pay him the rent, demands contracts, bonds, deposits, etc., wanting to ensure himself. If all the landlords of a city do the same, a poor widow with children who cannot fulfill those heavy requirements will have to sleep on the street or in the city's parks with her children. All wars have their origin in fear. The Gestapo, torture, concentration camps, Siberia's horrible prisons, exiles, forced labor, firing squads, etc., have their origin in fear. Nations attack other nations because of fear. They search for security in violence, thinking that by killing, invading, etc., they can make themselves secure, strong, and powerful. In the secret police offices of counter-espionage, both East and West, spies are tortured because the government fears for the state security. All crimes, wars, and transgressions have their origin in fear and in the search for security. In bygone days, there was sincerity among people. Today, fear and the search for security have done away with the wonderful fragrance of sincerity. Friends distrust friends. They fear that their friend will rob them, swindle, or exploit them. And they even use, in a stupid and perverse way, proverbs such as this one: never turn your back on your best friend. Hitler-like people used to say that this proverb was golden. Now a friend fears a friend and even uses proverbs to protect himself. There is no longer sincerity among friends. Fear and the search for security have done away with the delightful fragrance of sincerity. Castro Ruz in Cuba has sent millions of citizens to the firing squad, fearful that these citizens would be the end of him. Castro seeks security in firing squads. He thinks that in this way he can find security. The perverse and bloodthirsty Stalin plagued Russia with his bloody purges. That was his way of finding security. Hitler organized the Gestapo, the frightening Gestapo, for the security of the state. There is no doubt that he feared that he would be overthrown, and because of this, he founded the bloody Gestapo. Every bitterness of this world has its origins in the search for security and fear. School teachers should teach their students the virtue of courage. It is unfortunate that children are filled with fear in their own home. Children are threatened, intimidated, terrorized, and beaten. It is the custom of parents and teachers to terrorize children and teenagers with the purpose of forcing them to study. It is common to tell children and teenagers that if they do not study, they will have to beg for money and they will wander the streets starving, or will work in humble jobs such as shoe shining, carrying bales, selling newspapers, etc., as if work was a crime. Deep down, behind all the words of parents and teachers, there exists fear for children and the search for security for children. The serious thing about all of this is that the child or teenager develops complexes. He becomes fearful, and later on in life becomes a person filled with fear. Parents and teachers who have the bad taste of frightening children and teenagers in an unconscious way take them down a path of crime. As we have already said, every crime has its origins in fear and the search for security. Nowadays, fear and the search for security have turned the planet Earth into a horrible hell. The whole world fears and wants security. In bygone days, one could travel freely, but now borders are filled with armed guards. Passports and certificates of every type are demanded to be able to go from one country into another. All of this is the result of fear and the search for security. He who arrives is feared, and security is found in passports and papers of all types. School teachers, college and university lecturers should understand the horror of all this and cooperate for the good of the world by knowing how to educate the new generations and teaching them the path of real values. It is imperative to teach new generations not to fear and not to search for securities in anything or anyone. It is indispensable that every individual learns to be more confident in himself. Fear and the search for security are terrible weaknesses that transform life into a terrifying hell. Everywhere abound fearful cowards and weak people who are always in search for security. Life is feared, death is feared, other people's opinions, gossip is feared. The loss of a social or political position is feared. The loss of prestige, money, a lovely house, a beautiful woman, a good husband, a job, a business, a monopoly, the furniture, the car, etc. is feared. Everything is feared. Cowards, fearful people, weak people abound everywhere. However, nobody thinks himself a coward. Everyone boasts of being strong, of being courageous, etc. In all social classes, there exist thousands of millions of interests that one fears to lose, and because of this, everyone looks for securities that become more and more complex, making life more difficult, complicated, bitter, cruel, and merciless. All gossip, slander, intrigues, etc., have their origins in fear and in the search for security. To avoid losing our wealth, position, power, and prestige, slander and gossip are propagated, murder is committed, and people secretly pay for murders to be committed. Powerful people on earth even have the luxury of having salaried and well-paid murderers, with a loathsome purpose of eliminating anyone who threatens to eclipse them. They love power for the sake of power and assure themselves of it on the basis of money and much blood. Newspapers are constantly reporting news of many suicide cases. Many believe that anyone who commits suicide is brave, but really anyone who commits suicide is a coward who fears life and looks for security in the fleshless arms for death. Some war heroes were known as weak and cowardly people. When they saw themselves face to face with death, their terror was so frightening that they became terribly wild, searching for security for their life. And in making a supreme effort against death, they were then declared heroes. Fear is often confused with courage. He who commits suicide seems to be very brave. He who carries a gun appears to be very brave. But in reality, people who commit suicide and carry guns are very coward. He who does not fear life will not commit suicide. He who does not fear anyone will not carry a gun on his waist. It is imperative that school teachers teach citizens in a clear and precise way what true courage is and what fear is. Fear and the search for security have turned the world into a dreadful hell.